You may be tired of all the fascism talk, but I really need you to understand the parallels of how anti Semitism developed in the late 19th and early 20th century and how anti immigrant sentiment is developing and has developed today. To do that, we need to start in Russia in the late 1800s. Russia was the premier land superpower in Europe. One of their strength industries was iron smelting. At the beginning of the 19th century, they provided 30% of the world's supply. But when industrialization hit, they fell way behind. In iron smelting, their share fell to just 4%. When they fought wars to make up for their lack of technology and industrial power, they used forced conscription, sending millions to the front lines to die. The collapse of their feudalist economy created a lot of pushback for Tsar Alexander II, and so he needed a scapegoat. Now, Jews in Europe had been second-class citizens for a long time, but that had started to change before this. Certain professions opened up for them, fields like law, finance, journalism, and medicine. And so Tsar Alexander II used this to create his scapegoat, blaming Jews for all the problems Russia was having. This resulted in a wave of violence against Jews all over the Russian Empire. As a result, more than 2 million Jews moved from Eastern Europe to Western Europe and the United States. But as they started to move to those other countries, they started to face pushback in those countries. In fact, the Russian secret police had fabricated a Jewish conspiracy called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And this was distributed all over the world, flaring that sentiment. Here in the US, it was distributed to hundreds of thousands of people by Henry Ford. And of course, this sadly ended with the worst atrocity in human history. Fast forward to today, and we see anti-immigrant sentiment rising all over the world. Industrialization is, of course, not the cause today, but around the 80s and 90s, a couple really big things happened that changed everything. The North American Free Trade Agreement and the rapid rise in technology, most notably the internet. We became a globalized world. And just like with industrialization, globalization created new winners. This time it was China. China's economy rose faster than any economy since the US at the beginning of the 20th century. Now, the big elephant in the room that I haven't talked about yet is colonization and racism. Going as far back as the Romans forcing Jews to scatter all over Europe, the forces of empire are what has caused the poor conditions that we see all around the world. And the people in these conditions become very easy scapegoats because they act like anyone would when they're fighting for their lives. It's a horrible cycle that's so hard to break. Whether it's the European meddling in the Middle East and Africa or the US and Latin America, these forces push people to find better lives elsewhere. And the only places to go are usually that of their colonizers, the ones that hoarded all their wealth. But in times of massive economic upheaval like industrialization or globalization, some people that had it really good don't anymore. And when that happens, they naturally look for somebody to blame. They first look to leaders, but of course they don't want to take it, and so they look for scapegoats. Today's scapegoat is immigrants. You can go down the list, whether it's crime, employment, wealth, you name it. Immigrants only help us in every measurable way, including undocumented ones. And yet half the country, and half the world for that matter, are convinced that they're the problem, whether it's Latinos in the US or Muslims in Europe. And this kind of sentiment really works out for power-hungry dictators. For Russia, it was Tsar Alexander II. For Germany, it was Mustache Man. For us today, it's Donald Trump. Like Russia's secret police manufactured the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, Trump and his people push Great Replacement theory and use terms like heritage Americans, referring to immigrant groups like Haitians as less than human. For Jews, this eventually resulted in biological racism followed by genocide. How far are we going to let it go for immigrants?